This is Good Together, the podcast that inspires you to create change in the world every day. Keep listening for actionable tips and tricks to incorporate eco-friendly practices into your daily life.
We've been featured by Apple as the #1 podcast for conscious consumers, and we can't wait to welcome you into our community of changemakers. I'm Liza.
And I'm Laura. We're the founders of Brightly.eco, the new platform for conscious consumers. We believe in supporting all creatures, great and small.
And our team of experts show you how to live and shop responsibly by sharing world-changing lifestyle ideas, products, and more. To read show notes from Good Together and to browse all of the planet-friendly goodness that we feature, head to brightly.eco/podcast.
And to help spread the word about the podcast, tap on this episode and share Good Together with your friends and family. A simple text message helps us grow and create change around the world.
This episode is brought to you by Sheets and Giggles. Laura, you've probably heard me talk all the time about my love for Sheets and Giggles. I've been sleeping on their new sustainable eucalyptus sheets for the past 8 months straight. I recommend them 1,000%. Every week I wash them and put them back on the bed right away. They're my go-to sheets. All of my other sheets, even the ethical ones, are taking a long break.
After hearing you rave about them for so long, Liza, I finally got a chance to try their new eucalyptus comforter. So I'm a weirdo. I really like having a comforter on my bed all the time, even when we have the heat blasting. I haven't woken up once hot while I was using this one from Sheets and Giggles. It's a great ethical and sustainable alternative to the down comforter we used to use that's now sitting on our guest bed. Another thing I love about Sheets and Giggles is that they don't use plastic packaging and the materials don't use pesticides, so they're kind to our animal and insect friends.
They also plant a tree for each sheet set that is sold, and they are passionate about giving back. They give 10% off to customers who donate their old sheets to homeless shelters, and they have donated over $40,000 to Colorado COVID relief.
Good Together listeners get 15% off by using the code BRIGHTLYECO at sheetsgiggles.com. It's time to guac about avocados. In today's episode, Liza and I started off trying to answer a simple question. Is our love for avocados bad for the environment? Like most of the topics we cover on Good Together, the answer is not a simple yes or no, but the good news is, while avocados might not be as sustainable as you originally thought, don't worry, they're more eco-friendly than meat options. In today's episode, we get into the avocado supply chain, ways to better use them before they go bad, and more. This is a super fun episode. I know you're going to love it. To see show notes, head to brightly.eco/podcast. All right, you ready to guac about avocados?
I love that. You and your puns. Yes,
Yep.
Very cool topic today. We're talking all about avocados.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love avocados? Actually, there are people like that.
They are.
They do have a specific, kind of texture, but most people like avocados, right? Come on, guacamole.
Exactly. Holy moly, guacamole. Laura, do we want to kind of tell our listeners why we're suddenly talking about avocados specifically during this episode? And why
Yeah,
now?
absolutely. I mean, I think it started off where we were brainstorming ideas around the Super Bowl. We recognize the Super Bowl has already happened at the time we released this, but people were talking a lot about like eating during these parties. Granted,
Yes.
it is still COVID.
Yeah, don't
Hopefully
forget about
people
that,
aren't doing
folks.
crazy parties. So that kind of came up as an interesting topic around, just avocados. Well, then we posted a video on social and tell folks what happened then. That was crazy.
Yes, we found this amazing avocado saving tip because, one thing, like personally, I've kind of, again, one of my goals for this year, it has been reducing my food waste. And with avocados, unfortunately, sometimes, if you buy them when they're too ripe, they go bad pretty quickly and you don't have time to cook them or use them, right? So we've shared this amazing avocado freezing hack. So you go to our TikTok and Reels and you'll find it there. We had over almost 400 views so far between these two videos in just like 2 days, essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's been really interesting to follow is how popular this video has been and how so many people didn't know you could do that, myself included. Like
Yep.
I've put avocados in the refrigerator before, but certainly I've never put them in the freezer. So that's super exciting.
And yeah, and that's again going back to the freezer is your best friend in terms of fighting
Yep.
food waste, right? So like, and I've said that on the podcast before. So why didn't I freeze avocados before? I do not know.
Well, I feel like there is a little bit of a I don't know, like a stigma associated with putting fresh fruits and
You're right.
vegetables in the refrigerator. Like they don't, it doesn't seem as fresh or something like that. Especially if you go to like a farmer's market, I feel like we all just kind of want them to sit on the counter. Maybe we don't, but I feel like I kind of lean into that. So yeah, put your stuff in the fridge or the freezer. And I mean, that's kind of how we got started talking about avocados. But of course, Lisa and I are also millennials. So, we're sort of duly required to love avocado toast and, eat a lot of avocados, drink a lot of wine and coffee.
Great description of our generation.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and apparently we part our hair on what's the whole debate right now? The middle part versus the side
Oh, I
part? I don't
missed
know.
that whole debate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's going on right now. But I've been personally a side part girl for a while, but it's quite a heated debate. Anyway, so avocados. I think for a food that so many of us eat all the time, we don't know a ton about them, right? Like we're used to just kind of grabbing them at the grocery store. They're usually pretty expensive, so I would imagine that most people do stop and think about the price of the avocado before they put it
They
in their
do.
cart. But that's probably about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So why have avocados have grown so popular in recent years besides the millennial avocado toast trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we've seen such a trend in wellness and, people
Hmm.
understanding that what they're choosing to put in their bodies relates to, all sorts of things in their health. And so avocados in particular are definitely classified as a superfood. They carry a ton of vitamins. I mean, like vitamin C, K, like vitamins you can't oftentimes find in other areas. And they can improve your cholesterol, which is good. I mean, they got good cholesterol.
Yeah, they have
And
the good
all that.
fatty acids, right? Is if that's
That's right.
correct term.
Yep,
Yeah,
and they're filling, right? Like they have like a really good they're pretty like almost like a chameleon when you think about them cooking wise, right?
exactly right. Because in terms of avocado, I mean maybe some people love the flavor of avocado just by itself, but basically it, as you said, it takes over any kind of taste notes of whatever you put with avocado. So
Yep.
if you put salt or spices, or if you put like cilantro, right? That's what you're doing with guacamole, or even anything else in the salad or the smoothies you are putting
Yep.
in. It just absorbs and I guess highlights, right, the taste notes of other things.
Yeah, no, I love using avocados in more savory things, but I've heard of people putting them in smoothies. I've done that before. I don't know. The texture to me was a little bit different, but I've heard so many really different creative ways to use and eat avocados. So this is kind of why we wanted to get into it. We all eat, a lot of them eat them. And actually, we talked about the Super Bowl, but 7% of the United States annual avocado intake is correlated with the Super Bowl
Of
because of all the
guacamole, right?
guacamole.
That's insane. Seven
All
percent of a yearly guacamole intake in one day.
in one day. And we also found a statistic that said from 2001 to 2018, a little under 20 years, the consumption of US avocados per person has tripled. So
Wow.
we
We love
love
avocado.
our
Yeah.
avocados.
And yeah, talking about avocados and why it's becoming popular, there is also a shift towards veganism, right? We always talk about eating less meat, eating less dairy. I personally, again, I'm guilty for avocado toast. This is something I eat almost every morning with like an egg on the side. But it's basically in many dishes, it's kind of almost like a substitute for dairy products like cream cheese, right? So like whenever I don't have avocados, I'm like, well, I'll put cream cheese on my toast or just regular cheese or something like that. But it's a more healthier and dairy free, for me at least, substitute for
That's really
yeah.
interesting. I mean, I know that people who are looking to do more vegan related diets, obviously, who aren't going to put cheese and butter and stuff like that. It
Exactly.
can be a really good substitute. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we don't have to tell you, listener, about avocados in terms of how to eat them. You love them. My personal favorite use of an avocado, other than guacamole, well, this actually is guacamole, but growing up, I went to University of Texas in Austin. There's a place there called Kirby Lane Cafe. It's an iconic institution in Austin, and they are the creators of queso blanco as we know it in Texas. So like a white queso, they kind of popularized that. But in the middle of it, they put a scoop of guacamole, which is so good. So you get like the warm guacamole, and then you get the warm queso,
Hmm.
and then the kind of the cool guacamole in the middle. It's so good. Oh,
Oh.
that's like sometimes I miss Texas for that reason only, that queso.
Well, let's talk about where they actually come from and where most of avocados come from in the US specifically.
Yeah. So as I looked into this,
Hmm.
I knew that most of our avocados were coming from Mexico,
Yep.
but we do also consume, a small amount of avocados from the United States, specifically from California and Florida. There are, we've probably all seen the advertisements from California Avocado. I forget the Avocado
Association. Yep.
Association,
Hmm.
that'll be on TV frequently. But truly, the bulk of them come from Mexico. And as a matter of fact, like a half of the global avocados come from Mexico, specifically do you know how to pronounce that, Lisa?
Michoacan. No, no, no,
Michoacan
no.
state?
I don't speak Spanish. I'm not gonna try.
Well, I know that she's been to Oaxaca a
Yeah,
few times, so
Oaxaca,
like
but this
maybe.
one is a Michoacan. No, I'm gonna
But
need
hey, you
to.
said that better than I would
Okay,
have done
all
it.
right.
So there we go. But the reason why we want to get into this is because there's a lot of impacts that avocados have, specifically the farming of them, on Mexico, from an
Hmm.
environmental perspective, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it also means that the food miles, meaning, the miles from between you and that food,
Yep.
are pretty high when we think about, just the overall impact of this fruit on the planet. And we found one statistic that avocados contribute looks like roughly
70.
72
Yep.
million food miles to our planet. So
Wow.
that's a lot, and it's something worth considering while we eat them.
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to my husband's family because I realized that my father-in-law, he has avocados, an avocado farm in Morocco. Obviously, here in the US, we don't get avocados
That's cool.
from Morocco. Thankfully, that's insane food miles, right? But yeah, I've been to the avocado farm. It's pretty impressive. But I don't know much about avocados, so that's
Wait,
why.
so what happened when you went to the farm? Tell us a little bit about that. I mean,
Well,
did you see any secrets happening there?
no, not really. I mean, they weren't. I don't think when I was there, most of the times I've been in Morocco, it was kind of in winter, but they were already small avocados there. It's pretty big farm. I have no idea what the actual size is, but yeah, I mean, he decided he switched from growing bananas to avocados. Very smart businessman, my father-in-law is, because avocados started becoming so popular. So yeah, he sells them on the market. Again, I don't know the economics of the avocado pricing, but yeah, it's been a good business for him. And yeah, I don't know any other details. It was cool. That's it.
That's awesome. So, yeah, speaking about food miles, we wanted to talk even more about the carbon footprint of an avocado. So, there was a study done in 2017, and it found that just two avocados were found to release roughly 850 grams of carbon emissions in 2017.
Wow.
And that's not just because of the food miles associated with the avocados, but it's because the avocados actually need to be stored at a specific
Yep.
temperature when they transport them, right? And it also avocados require a ton of water to be farmed, and
Mm,
so this is gonna it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of water to produce avocados, and actually in 2020. We there was 9.5 billion liters of water used on a daily basis for avocado production. Like
wow. Yeah,
what?
I'm glad that we have
That's a
all of
lot.
this number. That's good to know, right? I'm like, oh, Lisa, maybe you should slow down on your avocado toast every morning. Okay.
Well, we'll talk about that
Yeah.
at the end of the episode around what you can do. The purpose of this episode is less about like a
Don't
bunch
eat
of
avocado.
negative
Yeah.
stuff about avocados or not eating them, but I think we wanted to just be a little bit more mindful
Aware.
about what goes into creating an avocado.
Yeah, so let's talk about, we've talked about water, and it's a very kind of interconnected issue with deforestation as well, right? So, taking this large amount of water into consideration, avocado production can lead to soil degradation, sprouting from large troughs. Like, for example, yeah, like it's interesting that my father-in-law grows avocado in Morocco, which is it's not a rainforest by any means,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So that probably has a negative impact on the environment. And they require a lot of light to grow, right?
Yep. Yep. So
Mm,
they are a light intensive crop. And so oftentimes in order to grow them, much like all other crops, trees have to be cut down to be able to clear, they're cut down, they're cleared to make room for this rising demand of avocado crops. And I talked about Mexico earlier, and specifically that region in Mexico is facing a lot of natural sort of disruption because of the popularity of avocados. There's deforestation happening. The natural resources are sort of being abused in a way to continue to grow all of these avocados. So it's something that's worth keeping in mind, especially when we can want to find the cheapest avocado, because that's what we're oftentimes looking for, right?
exactly.
They're expensive to begin with. We look for the cheapest one. If it's coming from Mexico, there are definitely these concerns to think about.
This episode is brought to you by Shits and Giggles, a company with a punny name but a seriously sustainable mission to make better bedding for everyone. We started partnering with Shits and Giggles earlier this year, and the positive reviews from our community keep coming in.
I've been on a hunt for sustainable bedding for a long time now until Brightly actually recommended Sheets and Giggles. I would highly recommend. The material is great. I personally tend to get hot at night and my boyfriend tends to get cold, so it definitely serves as a happy medium. Highly recommend.
I also get hot at night, and I found that after sleeping with Sheets and Giggles moisture wicking sheets over the past few months, I can't remember the last time I woke up overheated.
I love my Sheets and Giggles sheets. They're my absolute favorite. Not only because they're super duper soft, but they are sustainably and ethically made out of eucalyptus.
Yep, I love that our scout Ashley called out how soft the Shits and Giggles sheets are. Plus, the eucalyptus that is in their 400 thread count sheets is grown without insecticides or pesticides. They also just launched a bunch of new colors, and I can't choose between navy blue and red. Help me!
Sheets and Giggles bedding is super lightweight and soft, and they really nail it on zero waste packaging.
We recommend Sheets and Giggles for the softest, most sustainable sleep out there. Good Together listeners get 15% off at checkout by using the code BrightlyEco at sheetsgiggles.com.
Oh my god, Laura, I just had my favorite vegan lunch ever. It was a green Thai curry.
That sounds amazing, but what's your secret? I feel like plant based meals have always been a pipe dream for me. I've been trying to cut down on my meat consumption, but I really don't have time to think up and prepare filling, tasty vegan meals.
Same here. I've been participating in a vegan cooking challenge with the Brightly community, and I feel like I've totally failed. Seriously. I feel like I've learned so many more meatless recipes this year, but when it comes to vegan cooking, I'm still very much intimidated. So when Thistle reached out to us, it was the perfect timing.
Thistle's plant forward meals are seriously tasty and are delivered ready to go on your doorstep. Right now, they're just on the West Coast, but they're adding more locations. Anyway, I was really surprised at how filling and super creative the meals are. The spices and the sauces they include are really unique and tasty.
I loved how fresh everything was as well, given that it's mostly vegetable based. Laura, I know both you and I love to cook, especially during the pandemic, but it's been a great addition to our weekly routines. It's a quick alternative to take out lunches between Zoom calls.
Absolutely. Thistle is plant based eating on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it, and bam, you're eating better for the planet. Good Together listeners can get $100 off with the code BRIGHTLY at thistle.co. That's THISTLE.co.
It's interesting to talk about an avocado specifically, right? Or any like when we're talking about, farming and producing food or different plants, we usually, at least like the how I used to think about that. We're just kind of grouping everything together. Or farming is intensive on the environment, right? Or growing anything requires different resources or a lot of water or whatnot. But it's actually not true for every plant. So the fact that
That's right.
avocado requires us to cut down trees, that's a huge impact. But not every fruit or plant requires that. And that reminded me of the documentary, the latest documentary by Sir David Attenborough. It's on Netflix original. It's heartbreaking documentary, but it's
What's it
really,
called? Do you
I'm
remember?
forgetting if you
Okay.
want. But latest one is basically he talks about his entire career, like back from what 1950s or so, right? And how he shows different segments of his travels and how during his lifetime some forests, some islands just completely changed in terms of the environment. There's a specific region, I think he talked about palm oil and how like regular rainforests are just being cut down completely because they have to grow palm trees in there. And that's kind of reminded me a little bit with the situation with avocado when you need to cut down native trees and plants. That is really, really bad for the environment.
Yeah, and just like we talk about shopping with your values, you can kind of apply different values to, food shopping and thinking about the different impacts that fruits and vegetables can have. So Lisa just talked about, deforestation and, that part of the environmental equation. You can also think about the carbon footprint, like we just talked about, and really choose to only pick things close to home.
Exactly.
But another thing that's interesting is also water, like we talked about. And the New York Times did a fascinating infographic related article that talked about the different amounts of water required to produce vegetables. And they did this to coincide with reporting on the California droughts. So we'll link to that in the show notes. I loved it, but they for an avocado, they said it takes 4.1 gallons of water to just produce a tiny slice of an avocado,
Oh
which
wow! So
is
not even the full
crazy.
avocado. Wow.
Yeah, and that's the California avocado. So it's
Okay.
possible it varies based on region. The one thing I was like, why didn't they just talk about the whole avocado?
Yeah,
But I don't know. I don't.
it's
I don't know.
interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just looked up quickly A Life on Our Planet. That's the
Okay.
documentary, the latest 2020 film by David Attenborough. I'm
Yeah.
just Google him if you guys don't know him. I'm sure you know, but like his career is just so impressive. Just a side note.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, in terms of what we need to do to kind of move forward, so I mean,
Yes,
first of all, there are definite changes that need to happen in the farming community.
absolutely.
So, farmers can start to hop on the renewable energy trend, and use solar powered pumps to irrigate fields rather than powering them with diesel generators. Right, that increases the
Absolutely.
carbon footprint of those avocados. They can also, attempt to not cut down and deforest regions as much. They can have more high efficiency related farming to help with that. And there's of course a ton of really negative things that happen in the farming industrial complex, like use of, harmful pesticides, over usage of water, by not, oftentimes there's not a precise way that people are watering.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of waste runoff there. So certainly, the farming, that the farming areas where all of this starts, we can, choose to support farmers that do things a little bit differently, and therefore,
The
kind of,
price.
yeah, the price, and of
Yeah.
course regulation, right? Like we talk about
Yes.
this in almost every podcast. Like the governments of the places around, the avocado farming need to come up with regulations to prevent some of this damaging environmental impact that comes out of, the overall farming, and of course avocado farming in general.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about, what farming industry needs to do, what changes they need to do. Of course, regulation by the government and local governments is super important. But what can we do as consumers to help, right? I mean, again, we're
Yeah.
not saying that you have to stop eating avocados completely. They are not as sustainable as we thought before this episode, right? But the truth is that meat is still the most environmentally damaging food product. So don't feel bad if you're eating more avocados but eating less meat, right, Laura?
Yep. And there was this quote I found when we were
Yeah.
researching this that I thought was really interesting. So, this is from Joseph Poor. He's a researcher at the University of Oxford who studies the environmental impacts of food. And he says, nothing really compares to beef, lamb, pork, and dairy. These products are in a league of their own in the level of damage they typically do to the environment on almost every environmental issue we track. But it's essential to be mindful about everything we
Yep.
consume. Air transported fruits and vegetables can create more greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram than poultry meat, for example. So, I love this quote from
Yeah.
Joseph, because I feel like it very much encapsulates what we say on this podcast every episode. It's not a clear cut answer. Meat, as we know, as it comes to land and water resource usage, is still the most environmentally damaging food
Yep.
product, like Lisa just said. But it doesn't mean that eating all meat is bad. It doesn't mean that eating avocados is bad. But there's other things that we can do to potentially mitigate, mitigate the impact. I mean, first, you could eat less avocados if you don't want to make it a daily habit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, or eat
You
closer
could.
to home, right? That's
Yes.
I think whenever we're talking about like sustainable food choices, eating locally is, I think, I know you've interviewed recently Lisa Health, and I'm always fascinated about this topic, and there are so many subtopics within this, right? Food and sustainability realm. But for me, eating less meat first, right? But also eating locally is probably one of the most sustainable behavioral changes you can do, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, you can actually try to grow your own avocados.
I
Speaking of
want to
like,
try that.
yeah, I mean, speaking of viral social posts, I
Yep.
think one of our first posts on Instagram that did really well was, and
Oh,
we'll
yes.
link to it in the show notes, but it's a
Picture.
beautiful sort of
Mhm.
lifestyle image of someone who has taken avocado seeds, and there's a process you have to kind of follow to get them to sprout, but they've got them all lined up beautifully on their shelf. And so you can literally take the seed and use it to create an avocado tree. There's also specifically, I suppose, bred varieties of avocado trees for in-home use, which is
Oh,
interesting. So
that's
you'll
very
see those. You can see them at Home Depot and places like that sometimes. But you can also order them online. And you can get like indoor avocado trees, which is
That's
pretty fascinating.
yeah, that is fascinating. I didn't even know that it's different kinds of avocado trees. But I think we kind of started the episode with this. The main thing is don't waste your avocado, right? And I
Yeah.
think this is why the videos that we posted a couple of days ago about the avocado freezing tip, which literally you will be able to keep your avocado pretty much fresh. You can freeze it for a few months. Food waste, right? Food waste, that's one. I know we had a whole episode with Sophie Egan. I don't remember the statistics, but food waste has incredible amount of negative environmental effects, and I think the main one is that food waste, it releases carbon emissions too, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the other thing that I always find just so interesting to think about is this is a mindset shift, right? We have all come from a land of abundance, cheap clothing,
Yes.
cheap food, cheap everything for the longest time. And so we are just used to having unlimited things at our disposal, literally. So we have gotten over thinking that food waste is a big deal. And it really is a big deal. And actually, I was watching, it's not Bridgerton. It was like, I have watched Bridgerton, but it's like one of these like period pieces. And
Hmm.
back in the day, a pineapple oftentimes was used as a very fancy display at the homes of people. Kind of, I believe it's in the Victorian area, but don't
Uh-huh.
quote me on that. Because pineapples back then were very rare. They
Yep.
only came from certain parts of the climate, and they were just literally, people loved the pineapple so much they put them on their dining table. They would display them, and then finally they would eat them. But oftentimes they would display them for so long that they'd actually go bad, which
Mm.
is yuck. But the reason why I bring that up is because they had such like a respect for the pineapple, right? Like they were like, this is pretty good. Like we should treat this really nicely. So I think
Yeah.
about that. Like let's maybe think about these more exotic fruits that we have now come to think of as commonplace as, special. And let's make sure that we do things like freeze them. We put lemon, you can also drizzle lemon over your avocados before you store them to keep them from going brown.
Yes,
We can also get over the oog factor with the brown. I know it doesn't look that good, but it usually tastes just fine.
Yeah, and I'm like, again, this is a mindset change, right? But like, I wanted to mention, like, whenever I show like my avocado toast to my mom, they always, and she lives in Russia, for them, I mean, even for us, avocados are expensive, but it's also like even between countries, we have completely different relationship with food and expectations, what we can get, and during which seasons, how much we are paying for, pretty exotic things to be getting and being able to eat like avocado in the middle of winter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of concludes our quick little snack of an avocado episode.
Love
I
it.
had to end with a silly pun, but Lisa and I are always really hopeful that with more conscious consumers will come more eyes on these problems, right? So laws and regulations relating to the farming, like we mentioned. Maybe we can come up with more certifications for avocados, and these eco certifications can help really educate us and inspire
exactly.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk more about avocados, don't forget we do have our own exclusive pilot version of the Brightly app, where we have over 6,000 of our ambassadors and users chatting with each other. If you have amazing avocado recipes, amazing avocado saving tips, or anything else within the realm of conscious consumerism, make sure to check it out, download it, and tell us how you like it.
Yeah, I mean, and the conversations happening on the app are amazing. And I always like to tell listeners, like, the reason why we created the app was for you. Like, you guys probably know, Brightly started as this podcast. Like, Good Together was really the very first inklings of what Brightly, our company, is becoming. And so everything that we do is in service of you, our community. We're so excited to continue to scale this year and beyond. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great episode. And thank you, Liza. Now I think I'm going to go have some avocado. It's about snack time.
Yep. See you.
Thanks for joining us
on another episode of Good Together. As always, you can get show notes and explore lots more content related to all things eco-friendly living by checking out brightly.eco/podcast.
And don't forget to join in on the conversation that's happening on our Facebook group. Simply search Good Together Ethical Shopping and it'll come up. You can also leave us a question through voicemail. The link is on brightly.eco/podcast.
If you're into social media, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and all of the channels. Our username is brightly.eco.
Finally, we want to leave you with a reminder. Every day is a chance for you to create change, and you're already covered for today since you joined us here on the podcast. Stay kind and live brightly.